Today on CityCast Denver. Yes, we're still talking about that election because votes are still being tallied, and in a race this big and this messy, every vote counts. I'm joined by two opinionated experts in local politics to hash it all out. Plus, as dark money rolls into next year's District 3 race, we dish our hot takes on what could be the fight of Lauren Boebert's political life. Today is Friday, April 7th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Okay, so it's Friday. We're recording live here at Westward. Producer Paul Caroli is on vacay in Santa Fe doing his Easter thing, so you're stuck with me. But I'm here with two folks who know this elections game obviously so well. First, joining us is a newcomer to our show. He's the co-host of the Get More Smarter podcast and founder of ColoradoPolls.com, covering politics across the state. He's been a journalist, a Democratic organizer. Jason Bain, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And then, of course, CityCast Denver's own state politics and green chili correspondent, which I feel like I've been underselling your achievements. You're also my favorite abortion access advocate. You're the switchboard for all political goss, and you're a fourth-gen East Sider and North Sider whose family came straight out of the San Luis Valley. Justine Sandoval is here.
Oh my God, thank you. Yes, that is me.
So you guys were already digging into the politics of the last couple of days. But as of this recording, Thursday morning, we're still waiting for another batch of results. But a lot has changed in the last 24 hours, and it's looking better and better for that progressive group of candidates. But we got to talk about the mayor's race. Mike Johnson's still in first place, but the runoff spot for second place was tightening.
The Bruff runoff and Johnson runoff is pretty much what's been predicted across the board.
Yeah.
And, people know as far as there wasn't great polling this election. And I mean, I'll argue there hasn't been great polling most elections that we've had. But
in particular, this one, we didn't really see much.
We didn't have any real data. And plus, there was just low participation for us to actually have enough people to say, so-and-so.
Yeah, I'm not sure you could have gotten good data.
No. It was no. We had 58% undecided weeks before the election,
and that's not common.
No, I mean, no. This whole election was not very common.
In a general election, say last fall, 2 weeks out from election day, you're looking at 5% undecided at most.
Oh, really? So this truly was an anomaly.
Yes.
Yeah, this was wild.
It's just hard to not think about yourself and your friends or your family or your people that you talk to about voting. That was me. I was oh, I'm undecided, but it was clearly a lot of us were undecided.
So was everyone else you talked to. I'm sure they were me too. I don't know.
So also the at-large race, Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez is still in first place, and her lead has grown to almost 20%. So she declared victory already. But we have to remember that this race is where two folks advanced with no runoff. And interesting, earlier in this week, the numbers had changed, and Sarah Parody surpassed Penfield Tate. And Sarah's part of this progressive group. Did that surprise you both at all? These late coming progressive votes.
I'm still not sure that happened, honestly.
Okay.
I don't know that we have a good grasp yet on who actually voted late. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the clerk's office has been all that clear about the order. Are they counting votes as they came in the last couple of days, or
So we can't really determine who was the latecomer votes.
Who was the last person to vote? I don't know. I don't know if they know that.
But it is interesting because we saw this in a couple different races, I'm thinking, that had flipped, that pushed a lot of these progressive candidates ahead. Shannon Hoffman in District 10, Chantel Lewis in District 8. The most surprisingly competitive race to me was D9 with incumbent Candice Baca. And then she pulled back ahead of Gerald Wilson. These are all the progressive candidates. And election night wasn't looking great for them. The next day, a different story.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I would say just as someone observing the progressive vote.
You're doing in high air quotes here.
Progressive vote is kind of fractured, and the community is kind of fractured at the moment. And so you've seen that. I think one thing that helped Sarah was a lot of people that endorsed Serena also endorsed her. So they kind of were running on a slate outside of like the progressive slate that was running with her. So, and because of that fracturing, I think she could have, got ahead of
because
some of the
Serena
other
already
candidates.
had a base. I mean,
yeah.
we know her. She's coming from the state level.
Yeah,
exactly. She was a known name.
And I
of
think the
city.
attachment of the two of them together and a lot of endorsements helped. But yeah, we're gonna still see what that one comes out to. But yeah.
What do we think about the narrative about because I would say at first it seemed like those progressive candidates weren't doing well. Now it seems like they are. I know I hear you, Justine, with the fracturing. The fracturing we see the most with progressives is in the mayor's race, right? Mm-hmm. We had a lot of options for progressives, and that didn't bear out in our favor, obviously, because it meant we were splitting the vote a bunch of ways. But in general, what do you two think about this conversation around progressives and voting in Denver in this moment in 2023?
Oh God, this is like keeps me awake at night.
Same.
I think this was more about the first Fair Elections Fund election.
Yes.
Having a lot of candidates. And what I've heard the most anecdotally, and I think I expected this to happen, was that people said it seemed like everybody's about the same because everybody talked about homelessness. And unless you're really listening closely, those conversations kind of all have the same buzzwords and phrases, and it's hard to tell the difference. And then you've got someone like Chris Hansen and his ad saying, I will audit homelessness programs. I mean, what does that even mean?
That seemed like such a weak stance to me.
Right.
Like we don't care if you're going to audit them. What are you going to do?
But that's a good example to me of a microcosm of the whole problem was that you say the word homelessness and you say some things and then the voters look around and go,
Yeah, and I think that what I saw a lot of is there were two sides to this. The whole crime narrative really came, to the forefront in this election. And that had to do with outside entities, too, that have been working on that crime narrative. You have, like, conservative radio hosts who have made documentaries that I've mentioned that,
right.
People like Jamie Gillis were in talking about how terrible Denver is.
It burned down entirely from what I heard.
What do you mean?
Denver.
Denver.
It's just a crater
It's a
in the
horrible
ground.
dystopia outside. Buildings are burning down the street.
But you're saying like that
But I think people blurred that line between what is crime, because there is crime going on. There's car thefts, all of these other issues. And then there are unhoused population. And people have merged them into two. And I think that blurred the lines for a lot of people of what was the crime problem. And we have an unhoused person issue. You have a humanitarian issue that is going on, and it should be addressed as such. And
But what's interesting to me is I agree with you, Justine. I think the homelessness, unhoused situation combined with the narrative of crime, which crosses over for some people as one and the same, for many of us it's not, dominated this election, but not in necessarily the way I would think. I was honestly, you guys, I was surprised Andy Rougeau got, at this point, he's almost at 18,000 votes. But what I think that says is there are people that like the camping ban and want it enforced. And I think that's an unfortunate reality for a lot of progressives is we can scream all we want. That's not going to change folks' minds. Jason, what did you think about that, the conversation around the crime narrative and this lumping it all together with homelessness? And
I was really surprised when Chris Hansen, his first ad was very dark about crime.
Yeah.
This was coming off a 2022 general election in which Republicans talked about crime and how Jared Polis was stealing your car and everything was terrible. I mean, the message for Republicans in 2022 was basically Colorado sucks, vote for me. And Chris Hansen tried a variation of that, like Denver sucks, vote for me. It doesn't work to tell people where the place they live is bad. They wouldn't live there if that were true. And it was a complete misreading on his part, and whoever, the other candidates that kind of followed along, You just can't do that. You can't tell people that where they live is terrible.
You've got to offer
It's just
something.
well,
You're going to solve it, or it
beyond
isn't
that, though,
bad here.
Yeah, it's just you live there. It's your
right.
If it was that bad, you wouldn't be there.
But what's interesting is like Chris Hansen did terribly. Honestly, I'm much more surprised.
Right. It doesn't work.
He got almost half the votes that Andy Rougeau did, and Chris had very slick advertising. He was out the gate with like commercials right away, and it did not translate.
I agree. No one wants to hear the city you live in sucks.
Right.
I mean, my family, I've been here 4 generations, whatever. We all know that. But it really, like, if you're here and you're invested, it doesn't matter. You ride out.
Right. We ride out whatever
the city. Because you were invested as a person living here. It's beyond, the talking points of crime is everywhere and, this, that, and the other. So I think, there needed to be more of a message is like, this is a problem with Denver overall, is that people are more focused on power here over policy. So you could have the best policy going forward, and that wasn't necessarily the focus for people.
I think I can narrow it down, the mayor's race, to Johnston and Brough for a simple couple of reasons. Everybody talked about the same thing, essentially. In that situation, the better funded, better run campaigns will win. Mm-hmm. And that's usually the case always. All things being equal, the better campaigns tend to win. I was waiting for some candidate to say something else, to say, yes, homelessness is very important, but we should, grow grass on top of every building or whatever.
Something.
Transportation. I thought transportation should have been a big focus. RTD is a mess. It's been a mess for a long time. Like, what are we going to do about, talk about density, talk about these other things too. But there was really no other topic that emerged from this election
that could have set somebody apart.
Oh, totally. Yeah. That somebody wanted to plan for the entirety of Denver instead of like focusing on this dilapidated Denver message, which is not true.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we live here every day.
Yeah.
We understand that there's issues.
Just cities are bad and good. Right. Every city has problems.
We're a real city. I mean, that's the thing is we have to deal with. It's like we're a real live city. I'm also thinking about, though, money, sure. Name recognition always seems to be something. But that did not happen in this election. I would say my surprises here were Debbie Ortega and Leslie Herod, just not even making it up there. And those are 2 pretty well-known names. What did you both think about that?
I was surprised that Leslie had underperformed. I still haven't figured out why that is exactly, but that was a surprising race to me. Debbie Ortega, I just feel like, Debbie had the name recognition. She had the experience, didn't run a great campaign.
Sure.
And that did not help her.
And when you guys say not running a great campaign, you mean like didn't get in front of people, wasn't out there? What makes a great campaign? So
you've got to figure out, in this race particularly, it's a little different. You don't want to run a citywide race because you're trying to get into the runoff. So you need that 18, 20% of the vote. So you need to sit down and say, all right, where is that? Where are those people? And how do I make sure they vote for me? And I don't think Debbie Ortega did that. And I don't know that Leslie Herod did that. And I think Leslie Herod also had some negative press that came out that I don't think she handled well. And it's magnified in a large candidate race because
you're trying to stand out.
You're trying to find any reason to mark someone off. And that gave people just enough reason to say, nope, not Herod. In a regular general election one-on-one matchup, I think a voter would be more likely to say, well, that concerns me, but
she still covers all my bases.
I'll weigh against these other things. That doesn't happen in this kind of race. And I think she missed that part of it.
Okay. Justine, what do you think?
No, I agree. And I think
with Leslie in particular, it just, when she announced, it was like, yes, duh. Okay. But then you're right. I don't know if
Leslie running for mayor had been a conversation that people have been talking about way before people announced.
Totally.
Like, we knew it was coming, and I was just kind of surprised I felt like, there was outreach and stuff, but not in the way that there should have been, like connecting with communities are going to vote for you and making sure you lock down those votes ahead of time. And I think overall, like you mentioned, people running a citywide race doesn't work when we have 17 candidates and we're about to do a runoff. You need to go find your base
and just make sure people that vote kind of are like the known quantity, and you need to make sure they know who you are and you're their guy.
I was talking to some candidates on Tuesday during the day, and they went door knocking, Saturday, Monday. And they were like, a lot of people were like, I wasn't even going to turn in my ballot, but since you came to my door, I'll turn it in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that was really the outreach that did not happen this election.
Okay. So my mind is like exploding right now because I'm thinking us political nerds were like, this election's going to be huge, right? First mayor choice that's not an incumbent in 12 years. We've had this struggle with many voters are not happy with Hancock, how we're handling the unhoused situation, this quote, rising crime thing. And then like the air was just pulled out. What do you think happened? Why do you think people had that apathy?
I think there's one issue that is different, that has changed quite a bit, going back to when Hickenlooper was first elected. Back then, Denver mayor was the race for a Democrat. In the 20 years since, or you go back to just the last cycle, Democrats won every statewide race by double digits. They don't, if you're somebody interested in politics, you want to rise up the ladder and you're a Democrat, there's other jobs now.
Interesting. But then for voters, what does that mean? Like, was it just like the paralysis of choice, the not knowing who any of the candidates were?
Oh, yeah. I think that definitely factored in, 17, 16, whatever it ended up being of total candidates is a lot, and lots of different messaging coming from every which way. I don't think voters tap out. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's not like I wanted to tap out. I was like, get me out of here. Get me out of Denver. I was like, I don't even know. I want this to be over.
There were a lot of candidates who didn't run because of their other options.
There's other jobs.
I think the Fair Election Fund, I personally think, showed that it was a failure, and it was a problem that it created so many candidates. And I think Denver has got to move away from this spring primary or spring election. It's dumb. It should be in November, coming off of especially as nationalized as every 2-year election is now. People were tired after November.
Yeah.
They checked out. And then all of a sudden it's like, what? There's a race?
Yeah.
Right. For mayor?
Exactly.
This should move to November and give people some time to digest it, give candidates some time to have the spotlight to themselves. I mean, because right now there's stuff happening in the legislature. Like, it's not the top. It's not the top
prayer. Yeah, it's true. It's not the top story.
But it should be.
Right. It's just bad timing.
Yeah.
Okay. My one last question before we move on is, we're looking at 2 well-funded white people. You guys, we have to talk about it. We had a race that had qualified folks of color running this race as well, and we're most likely going to be here with these 2 well-funded white folks.
Well, I mean, like you said, fair elections didn't work. Like, this idea that it was supposed to bring all of these candidates that didn't have access to like big money, but in the end, big money still wins. Yeah.
But it's also more than, I look at fundraising as more than, different than money. Having been in politics and campaigns for a long time, fundraising is an example of support. That's why I look, and why I'm sure Justine looks at early campaign finance reports. I know there's going to be outside money that comes in, but I want to know how many people have thrown down and said, I'm with them.
Early on. You think that's a good determination?
And throughout the right, it's hard to raise money.
Yes.
And I think there's a perception that it just sort of falls from the sky if you're a connected person. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And, Johnston and Bruff, the reason they have the most money is because they really worked at it. It's not the only reason, but it shouldn't be neglected. It's not like they just, found it in their backyard.
It's from connections they've made and things they've done. I mean, I would still be a little bit weary of that just because Johnson was getting outside money from like Silicon Valley. Like, none of our grassroots candidates were going to have that.
No, and the reality is our campaign system still works the way it does. And those people just knew the game better, I think, in a lot of ways that other people don't. And a lot of people that I know from the political world who are really good at this stuff didn't want to touch the mayoral election and were all the way out of it. So that didn't help a lot of these candidates. They had grassroots. I'm a grassroots girl.
Same.
But if you don't have that experience, it doesn't translate to
There were
numbers.
a lot of campaigns with very inexperienced people.
Oh,
I know.
yes. So many.
And that, I think that probably bared out in where we ended up. But also something I would say is with the Fair Elections Fund, with the amount of folks in the race, I think folks were concerned, well, I just want to make sure I go with the person that's probably going to get there. Right. So I think some more progressive votes went to like Mike Johnston.
There needs to be more of a barrier of entry
really
for something like that. Because, I mean, you've got half of the field basically just stopped doing anything in early March.
Yeah. And that was really obvious.
Because either they didn't know what to do or they were tired of it already, or, it's hard to win. Campaigns are hard. It's not like I don't know how to engineer a building.
Right. And
I wouldn't think I could.
I'm going to stop trying right now.
I wouldn't think I could. But people think I could do a campaign.
So a takeaway from this for me is like maybe the Fair Elections Fund wasn't the greatest, didn't give us the greatest election. I think the idea was
not the answer to the problem.
Yeah.
Great.
There is a problem. Like
Yes.
people who have access to money or better access to money shouldn't be the only people who can emerge as like good leaders.
So that's still a problem. It's just this wasn't the right answer, maybe.
But you also have to have people that understand what to do with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Some of the money I looked at, like
Yes.
Ian Thomas DeFoy received $156,000 in Fair Election Fund money. He got 2,200 votes. What did he do with that money?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I not from like I'm questioning his finances perspective, but like you're saying, maybe it's
what
just
did you spend it
the
on?
inexperienced campaign situation here, because he was throwing great parties. He was really out in the community. But I would also say he kind of was going the route that Kaylin went when I was on her campaign, which was like, we're going to talk to people who don't normally vote, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to vote. It's an uphill battle.
Well, and Ian's victory is that he came out well liked overall, and people are like, Ian did a good job. He didn't get any of the messiness. A lot of people are like, I agree with Ian that we're doing campaign. Like, but there are some very specific things in the campaign world, like targeting, mail, all of these things that you have to dedicate money to. And like I said, I don't think some people were experienced enough in what it took to do that type of targeting for this race.
If you had given Ian $1.5 million.
But if he
what
didn't
would have
have
been
the,
different?
He needs the infrastructure of a campaign.
You still got to spend it correctly.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Put those mailers out like
get the mailers. Yeah, I know, right? Which annoys people, but it also means we know how we probably feel about.
Well, because we had those
that.
people who got their ballot and like, I'm not filling this out, and people will decide like if you get a mailer from this person or you get contact by that person, it does change.
It does make a difference.
Especially in an election like this where there's just not high enthusiasm.
Right.
But people feel like they need to vote.
And you want someone who's trying.
Yeah.
Or you feel like, hey, they're making an effort.
Yeah. You came to my door.
Yeah.
You went all the way out. I haven't talked to anyone, so you win my vote. Nobody's sitting here going through policy and like,
the people that aren't us.
Yeah, the people that aren't us aren't doing that.
Which is not to say anything about voters. It's like it's not their job to think about it.
And they don't have time.
They shouldn't have to. They should be able to make a clear choice pretty easily based on the information out there. And we had a lot of information going, and like you guys are saying, campaigns themselves gave up. And it just kind of fell in on itself.
Your job as a candidate is to go to those people.
Yeah.
The people, their job is not to come to you. And the campaigns that did well are the ones that do that right. And that's usually the case.
Yeah. I had people who were like big anti-Bruff people, and then they met with her and they were like, oh, you know what?
I heard some similar things. Yeah.
And that was it.
And you're like, that's really all it takes. It's not to say that's a good thing or a bad thing, but like, I get it.
For now, yeah. That'll change.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
In the next couple of weeks. But yeah, in a big field like that. Yeah.
We're not even going to get into the runoff. I want to, but we don't have time.
Right.
But we're just going to end it there with this conversation. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, something else. This episode is brought to you by the Jewish Community Center. JCC Denver is thrilled to be hosting a night of knee-slapping comedy on April 20th. The event will start with a competitive stand-up element, during which students from the Tight 5 stand-up comedy writing workshop will strut their stuff in an effort to win the most audience votes. The first-time comics will open for Jam headliner Avi Lieberman, everyone's favorite Orthodox comedian. A portion of proceeds from this event will go to support the Max Wolf Theater Academy Scholarship Fund, which enables young theater buffs to spend their summers on stage. Come for a laugh, to cheer on a friend in their stand-up debut, or to simply show support for theater arts. For more information, visit jccdenver.org/JAAMM. Okay, we're back. We're pulling out here a little bit and looking at a bigger picture. We're looking at Colorado politics. Recently, there was a story from Sandra Fish at the Colorado Sun about this group, Rocky Mountain Values, that kicked off their campaign recently to target Boebert's race, and not in a good way. Jason, can you quickly explain? This is dark. I guess this is dark money entering the race for Boebert's seat. What's going on here?
Dark money was always in the race. It was in the race last time. It's in every race. It's like the ghosts in your walls. Dark money's everywhere. No, but dark money is just a more ominous sounding name for something that's been around forever. Independent expenditure committees, PACs, 527 IRS code committees. It's people who want to and can and have the ability to spend more money, pooling it for the purpose of,
influencing an
election and
not revealing who they are. I think that's where the dark money part comes in, right? It's like, we don't know who is funding this.
We don't know who's funding it. We can guess. I mean, and you could probably come up with some pretty close hits just on guessing alone. But it's the important part here to me is that it's April 2023 and there's a significant organized outside money effort targeting Boebert. That's new.
Really? And this race is not until next year.
Yes. November 2024.
So that's the interesting part to you, is like outside groups getting involved in this particular race?
This is a race. The 3rd Congressional District is a Republican +9 district that's based on presidential performance in 2020. So Trump won that district, that area, by 9 percentage points. That should not be a winnable race for a Democrat.
But we saw Adam Frisch.
He came within 546 votes. Boebert's routine has tired already. And I think you've seen that with her recent declaration that she's going to now accept earmarks for years saying that they were evil and corrupt. And
so she's changing her ways. She
understands that she needs to do something to convince voters that she's doing her job and not just tweeting and yelling at Biden.
I was like screaming.
And screaming at Biden, sure. So what this story about the dark money group says is that Boebert is actually vulnerable, and Democrats only need to win a net 5 seats to retake the majority in the House. Clearly, people are seeing this as one of those.
As one of those seats.
One of those routes.
Justine, Rocky Mountain Values, this group behind this push. What do you know?
So Rocky Mountain Values, one thing that they did with the Cory Gardner's election was they were very effective at holding him accountable. And that's exactly going to be the same thing with Boebert. They're going to come in and spotlight her voting record and the fact that she has done very little for her community. And I think that's going to be what Rocky Mountain Values is able to do. And she really brought it upon herself, at this point. And they're getting in early to continue to spotlight the fact that she is not doing anything for the people of her district that they feel is impactful and that really needs to be done. That is such a crucial part of the state. You know, we have water issues going on. We have our whole huge chunk of our agricultural industry in her district, and she's not doing anything that's really going to help people. And what you will see in Colorado, and a lot of people don't believe me, but I worked on abortion rights in this state for 8 years, is that Coloradans outside of Denver will cross party lines for what they need to have done.
Yep.
And that's not
Absolutely.
important to them if she's a Democrat or Republican. It's who is addressing their needs in their community. And I think Rocky Mountain Values is gonna hold her accountable just like they did Gardner.
Oh, yes, right. That's where we sort of were introduced to this group. Rocky Mountain Values they were part of the money behind the push to get Gardner out.
Yes. So yeah, they're new. They're not new. Right. They're not new to this. They're true to this.
Okay. Well, again, Jason, you brought up that she squeaked by last election, winning by less than 600 votes against Adam Frisch. But what was interesting to me was like both Dems and the GOP were not even paying attention to this race because they didn't think Boebert could be challenged. What do you think now? Do you think they're all like the GOP's really on guard on this situation?
I'm torn, honestly. Part of the reason I think no one thought this in 2022 was that in 2020, there was an effort behind Diane Mitchbush, the Democratic candidate. Boebert had not yet been elected, so she was an unknown. And she easily won, and it validated the data, on presidential election. It validated the +9 data that I mentioned earlier. And it just nothing had changed, really, except by the time the Dobbs decision came down, that changed. But there was no reason to think things would be different if Democrats had no chance then.
There were no signals pointing to this could be concerning race.
It was inevitable at some point, I thought, but not. I'm surprised that she wore out her welcome this quickly.
I mean, I was the only outlier in all of the groups that were like, I think she can be taken down. But there were no signs that were pointing to that being the case. So I understand why there wasn't that investment.
And we also had the 8th district.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then
what does that figure in? How does that work?
Everyone was focusing on a very competitive district with having a new representative once we created CD8, Congressional District 8.
Was that the and Barbara Kirkmeyer race?
Like Northern Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah. So, when we're focusing resources, especially national resources, the D-TRIP, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, wasn't going to put the resources into Boebert's election. They were going to make sure that we picked up a seat, which was the CD8 seat. So I think there was a lot, resources were torn.
We know we could win CD8. We're not sure if we can beat Boebert. So I think that was
going for the more sure bet.
Yes.
Putting money, resources, attention there. Yeah. And then we actually saw voters tell us something, right? Like, so this is what I want to know. I remember being down in that part of this. I remember being in that part of the state when this race was going on, and there's signs for her everywhere, right? And I'm like, oh, there's no way. I get it. But people like us are probably fatigued with her. Do you think her base is finally
they're over
thrown in the towel?
There were multiple stories, local and national, after the election, and everybody said the same basic thing. The people they interviewed, from Pueblo to Durango, wherever, was that I just want someone to do the job.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's all.
Do the damn job. And girl, your job is important.
It's not
super important.
Right. It's not that the problem isn't that she tweets and screams at the president. It's that she does nothing else. She doesn't
get anything done.
Yeah.
So you can do that all day.
She'd be fine.
Okay. That's fair. I just wondered because, I think about her in the same way that maybe folks like me think about AOC, right? She's loud, she's brash, she's young, she's cool. Like, whether we think she's cool or not, she's cool. Sure. She's like, you know what I mean? She's got that.
She's different. She's a character.
She has that star power that I think a lot of folks are attracted to, depending on which side you're on. But, and not to compare them in any way, I'm just saying how we pay attention to them as sort of stars in the world. And it just sounds like, so like you were saying, you guys are both saying, so at the bottom, when we get to the brass tacks of this, it's not just that she's loud and annoying, she's just not getting stuff done and voters are.
That's the bottom line.
That's it.
That's the problem.
So you think this race has a chance of flipping that seat?
Oh, yeah.
My concern is that a presidential turnout is much different than a midterm turnout. The people, if Trump is the nominee, say, the people that are going to show up just to vote for Trump are going to vote for Boebert.
Sure.
And that, I think, is going to be the big hurdle.
So one more thing before we close out on this. We know the money is there. Is there a candidate? When does the candidate appear that's going to be the challenger for Boebert?
I think it's likely Adam Frisch.
Really?
He just announced that he'd raised $1.7 million in the first quarter. I mean, that's a lot of money, especially for a race that, is mathematically shouldn't be that competitive. We may get other Democrats jumping in at some point, but clearly they looked at it and decided that getting on this early hopefully will dissuade other Democrats, that from their perspective, and let him just focus on Boebert. It might just end up that way.
What do you think, Justine?
Well, I think that overall, I think any generic Democrat candidate could have came in as close as they did to Boebert. And it's because I think people in their mind, like, it was Adam Frisch. I don't think it was Adam Frisch at all.
I don't.
No.
But someone from Aspen? I would talk about a divide here.
Don't think that he's necessarily the best representative of that district, but because people have that in their mind from this last election, they think that it's important to jump, in supporting him early. I don't think he's necessarily the candidate, but you're going to see people probably do that and follow that.
It helps a lot to say 546
Oh,
votes.
yeah. He has that.
And he's going to say that over and over and over.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
It's powerful. We watched that recount. It was really interesting.
Yeah. So not my favorite candidate to be leading the pack there, but logically it makes sense.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. I don't know that he would be the ideal representative, but I'll take a rock over.
Yeah, no,
Lauren
totally.
Boebert, so.
And I think that's where a lot of us are. We're like, okay, whatever, Adam. Like, better
literally
than
anyone.
Yeah, like, okay.
Literally anyone but this person.
Yes.
Okay, well,
anyone but Boebert.
Well, we'll be on Boebert watch as usual. We're going to take one more quick break, but when we come back, we are going to tell you what we think you should do this weekend.
What's up, weather fam? Rain or shine, I'm Andy Stein here with your CityCast Denver weather forecast for this weekend. And y'all, I know we had to deal with a little bit of cold and snow this week, but that was the price that we had to pay to get the weekend that we're about to enjoy. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous outside. High temperatures are going to be approaching the 70s. We'll probably end up in the upper 60s to low 70s both Saturday and Sunday. And that means you're probably going to see Bree out at Wash Park and you're probably going to see me out at Cheeseman Park. But ultimately, I'm pretty sure you're going to see much of Denver outside because it's going to be one of those really, really good weekends. Saturday could have a little bit more cloud cover than Sunday, but still overall looking really nice. Hey, looking a little further out into early next week, we could be approaching 80 and eclipsing that 80-degree mark Monday and Tuesday. We normally hit 80 degrees in the end of April, so we're a bit early this year, but I don't think that's a bad thing because the warmth is going to feel oh so nice. Y'all have a great weekend and enjoy it outside.
It's time for the official CityCast Denver, maybe for your weekend, as in maybe you'll see us there. As usual, there's so many things happening in Denver, but there's only one where you might actually see us. Our newsletter editor, Adrian Gonzalez, rounds up his best bets in our newsletter, Hey Denver, every week, and he's here to give us his top picks. Adrian, hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What up? Other than taking a nap after this crazy election, I think we need to do some fun stuff this weekend.
Yes, it's not political, please.
Yes, not political. So I took those out of
You're
the
the
recommendations this week. First up, it's First Friday.
First Friday!
So why don't we go down to Arts District on Santa Fe and just walk around, look at art, and not talk about the election?
Okay. That's always a given. I don't know how you guys feel about First Fridays.
I just like the last part, not talk about the election.
Wherever that may be.
Justine, what do you think?
Good old First Fridays are always the best. Take your Rolly cooler and stop by each studio and say hello to everyone.
Rolly cooler.
Your Rolly cooler.
She brings her drinks and a place to sit.
I bring my Rolly cooler and the
Bro,
secret.
you're doing it right.
Yeah,
Justine.
and then you can stop and then chat with everyone.
I love this. This is way better than
yeah, Rolly cooler.
Okay. Cool.
I'm just
All
walking
right.
around.
First Friday. What else we got?
Well, the Rockies season kicked off yesterday.
Yes.
So we have 3 different games. You can go tonight, tomorrow. There's an evening game at 6. Or you can go in the afternoon on Sunday. The Washington Nationals are in town.
Lots of options.
Yeah.
And they're still not out of the playoffs.
Yeah, this is the rare time of the year where you can go and they're still in playoff contention.
Yeah, I'm going today because I'm too old to go on opening day now. I just don't have it in me to party
Same.
all day. I'll be going today to enjoy opening day light. Our favorite bar in Lodo is Coors Field.
And they know that because the team can suck and they can still sell out.
You can get in for $1 and drink for $100 and
there you go.
filled, and it's great.
So Rockies games all weekend. Great.
All weekend. Hang out. The next one is at Family Theater. It is the musical play from Frank Wiedekind, Spring Awakening. Now, this is, if you haven't seen this one, I love what they call it, part realism painting and part My Chemical Romance concert. This is from the late 19th century German writer. It's about a group of schoolchildren who explore their own sexual identities with a brutal and suppressive society.
Whoa. I mean, I love family theater productions because they always put an interesting twist on things. They bring humor in places you wouldn't expect. This is a theater group that has been around for decades here in Denver. They focus on supporting actors with disabilities. I don't know. If you've never been to a family theater experience, I highly recommend it. They're so fun. They're just so well done. Great theater troupe. Okay. All right. Well, what's our last pick?
Well, our last one, our friend Juan Fuentes, who's a local photographer, friend of the pod. On the weekends, him and his family sell carnitas. If you're a carnitas fan, stop by the garage. You can get them by the pound, get tacos pre-made. Well, his dad, Don Juan of Carnitas Don Juan fame, is needing a new surgery. He's had some health issues in the past, and so for the next 2 weekends, they're selling the carnitas out of the garage at a little bit of a higher price to raise some money. They're selling T-shirts, some merch. You can also donate if you, for some reason, don't want carnitas. Maybe if you're vegetarian and you just want to support. So you can DM them, find them on Instagram.
We'll share a link in the show notes. Yeah. So you can pre-order your carnitas and then you stop by his family's garage and they serve them up to you and they're insanely
what part of town
good.
Is the
location? I think is he in Westminster?
I don't know if it's Northland, Westminster. Those all blend together, but it's near I-25 and 84th.
Yeah, but it's like the north side.
It is the north side and it is like right off I-25. So it's not hard to get to. Also, this is an amazing opportunity to support somebody who's been in the community for a long time. We all know restaurant workers have terrible, if not any insurance at all. So being able to help out Don Juan and his family would be amazing. We'll put a link in the show notes. Again, I cannot recommend enough. The best carnitas I've ever had came out of Juan's dad's garage. Okay. Ooh, I mean,
I have a guest one.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Last home game for the Denver Nuggets in the regular season is Sunday.
Yes.
The Nuggies.
Sunday.
Yes.
They have locked in the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. So.
I went last week, and I think I went to the one game where they just play terrible. But it's still a good time.
Yeah.
But it's still a good time. I would say getting to go to a Nuggets game, even if you're not a basketball person, it's the
fun
most.
time.
They're so good.
Oh, they're fun. The DJ's amazing. Just the whole experience. That'd be a tough one for me. Okay, so what do we want to recommend?
We have First Friday.
Okay.
We have the Rockies all weekend. Spring Awakening, Family Theater, and Carnitas Don Juan. And then we have our guests, the Nuggets.
I mean, I would say we could recommend Juan's thing because you can go all weekend, anytime. That could
Pre-order.
be in addition to one.
I'm combining.
Yeah.
I'm going Rockies game, and then I'm gonna go get my carnitas and be able to soak up my outfield drinking on Friday.
I'm with you, Justine. I'm with you on that one. What do you think, Jason? Is that a good
Carnitas and Nuggets will be mine.
Oh.
So we'll say carnitas and Denver sports.
I'm a masochist. I like
sports.
the Rockies.
Yeah.
So
There you have it. That's the official CityCast Denver maybes for your weekend. But there's way more where that came from. Adrian's got more recommendations in our newsletter, Hey Denver, which you can subscribe to right now by texting Denver to 66866. Adrian, Justine, Jason, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
thank you.
Thank you all.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Paul Caroli, Aaron O'Toole, and Lizzie Goldsmith. Adrian Gonzalez writes our morning newsletter, and I'm Bree Davies, your host. Our music is by Los Mocochetes with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. If you haven't already, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CityCastDenver, and tell a friend about us next time you see them. You can sign up for our daily newsletter, Hey Denver, by texting Denver to 66866 and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. Bye-bye. Our newsletter editor, Adrian Gonzalez.
I rhyme? What?
I'm sorry.
You can't go to 2?
He rips and he rhymes, he rhymes and he rips.